Hi, everyone. Welcome to another OAAA lunch break. It's great to have all of you here. Today, we are so excited to welcome back my great friend, Jack Myers, who is the world's leading media ecologist and also the founder of Media Village and advancingadvertising.org. In Jack's important industry role, he has to be media agnostic because he's the leading observer of the business. But today, I'm hoping we're going to make him reveal why he's such a believer. Why he is such a believer in the awesome power of out of home. And Jack is also going to share his top line outlook for the 2022 media economy and answer some of our and my burning questions on critical trends so we can capture and grow investment in out of home, which we all care so deeply about. So I want to kick it off right away, Jack. I don't think you need much more of an introduction. I want to talk about the theme of today, Carpe Diem, seize the day. You know, we've all in our industry and in the whole world been through radical upheaval and really tough times. And you know, we're all appreciating, you know, things hopefully going back to normal again. And it seems that the out-of-home industry has been rebounding very nicely. I would say better than nicely, hugely. But, you know, again, we're faced with more adversity. So Ukraine, rising gas prices, maybe another COVID-19 variant.
Will Smith, don't want to forget Will Smith. Most important story, it appears.
For sure, Will Smith. So, you know, all of these things are affecting us in the advertising world. And again, Will Smith. So what's your projection of, you know, the effect ahead, how long this may last, and above all, like, how do we in the out-of-home industry and in the advertising world in general, like, seize the day and grasp the moment and move on?
Well, Anna, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me back. It's always good to be invited back. And as you mentioned, I am a fan. I started out my career in out of home selling bus advertising in New York and then nationally for a company called Metro Media that's not around anymore. Is owned by Foster and Kleiser, another name that is legendary in the out of home industry. It's an interesting time. Seize the day is a good word. I just had an on the record call with Michael Nathanson of MoffettNathanson, who's one of the foremost analysts of the media industry. And he was also pointing to the disruption, the uncertainty. But since I'll put in context his comment about advertising, and since it's opening day for baseball, even though for me as a Yankee fan, opening day is really tomorrow, but I'll put it in the context that with all the uncertainty, with all the change happening in the world, the one constant is baseball. And what appears to be the one constant in our economy right now is advertising industry growth. And Michael pointed out that coming out of the early months of COVID, when most analysts were anticipating a sustained down market for advertising, it recovered very quickly. Out of home recovered more quickly than many believe. The industry responded with a tremendous amount of agility in identifying where audiences are and how to reach them. Today, we see heavier traffic than ever in most cities, and we're seeing a very resilient out-of-home market in a growth industry. So we're forecasting 22% growth this year for out of home. I'm not sure how that compares to some of the other analysts. And then a sustained 10 to 15% growth overall for out of home and digital out of home over the next decade.
Well, that's good. That's in line with most, I think, predictions I've seen, maybe a little bit on the higher side, which is good because you are an expert. So no, I think that's good advice, and I think that's really how we need to think about things, right? So I want to talk a little bit about out of home and trends that we're seeing in the market that could help out of home as we're bouncing back. You know, your whole career has been built on, you know, very much predicting trends in the media world and you know what's going on out there. So What do you think are the top trends that we need to focus on and educate ourselves about as we're growing out of home? I'm going to ask you to, if you can, name a few, and we can dig a little deeper into each one of them. So where do you think we need to focus right now? What are the top trends that matter to us?
Well, there are the short-term, most immediate trends, measurement being one of them. You talk about trends. It was 2006 when I was speaking at the OAAA conference, and it was just a few weeks after Twitter had launched. And for some of you in the audience, if you were in the industry at that point and at that conference, you probably remember that when I mentioned Twitter from the stage, it was the first time most of the audience, if not all the audience, had ever heard the word, and it became a meme throughout the conference. And I'm really in that same context. The message that I was communicating and why I mentioned Twitter is that the idea of 180 characters, 160 characters is really a billboard. Or, that was how I sold bus advertising. You wanted just a few characters on that moving board. And that this was an opportunity for the out-of-home industry to really connect with the emerging digital industry and to recognize that the oldest media can also adapt to the newest medium. And I think we're seeing the same thing today with the metaverse. I've been spending a lot of time learning about the metaverse and the fact that, in gaming and in AR, there will be billboards, there will be, and that is an out-of-home medium. It's an experience, whether it's in the Oculus or on the screen or in some future form of the metaverse. Out of home and contextually will always be there. So I think there's a big opportunity there. And that does tie back to the realities of measurement. In that 2006 conference, the number one topic was measurement and the need and importance of measurement and the investments being made. I think there was an announcement that $25 million would be invested by the out-of-home industry in measurement and research over the next decade, which, is an investment that never seems to end. But what's different today in measurement is the fact that there's so much disruption in the television business around Nielsen and currencies. So measurement is being dramatically disrupted, and out of home, as opposed to being an outlier trying to fit in, is an industry that's been making the investments and has more measurement, more data, and more opportunity. A couple other trends that we can talk about. One is retail media and the growth of the Walmart Connect and Roundel media reinvented by Target, CVS, Walgreens, Kroger, Kohl's, all investing in retail media networks, which I think is again an opportunity. And then the workforce, the changing workforce, and the need to really look at the sales organizations and making sure that you're contemporary with the shifts taking place in the agencies. And then finally, the changes taking place inside the brands themselves in how media and advertising is being evaluated and planned.
So that's really, really, really great points. And I want to drill a little deeper into some of them, if I may, Jack. And I think the concept of measurement is it's surrounding everything we do. I think for our industry, as we're becoming more and more part of a broader media ecosystem, having good measurement, both when it comes to effectiveness as well as audience, so we can more easily compare out of home to other platforms, is going to be key. So with that, I want to just ask you a little bit more about, you talked about television, right? So television is going through, some changes, right? The audiences, which is partly why Nielsen, is having the problems they do. I mean, they have a hard time with their current model measuring audiences because the audiences might not really be there, right? So there's a change, there's fall off in audience, there's obviously OTT. that is a part of, the video marketplace that is much harder to advertise in, because it's, subscription based and consumers can skip the ads in a different way. And, it's just a different experience. It's more one-to-one. Our medium, however, is like one-to-many, just like television was, right? So, or is. So do you think that out of home could, if not overtake, but at least take some share and, benefit from, what's happening in television and overtake some of the role as the best mass reach medium? Very leading question.
It's a good question, and it's a bigger question than the one you actually asked, because it not only includes television, it includes audio, and the fact that radio continues to be the largest reach medium, and radio is primarily an out-of-home media in the car. So I believe that one of the things that's a real opportunity for the industry is to look at how it can, in a more of a programmatic marketplace, make sure that inventory is blended and not distributed, organized as it has traditionally been within the agencies. And as you look at the opportunity for out of home in the context of television, marketers are increasingly zero basing their investments. They need reach. Reach continues to be the primary factor. They're getting their arms in OTT and streaming. There's an addressable, there are frequency issues that have not yet been resolved. So the fact that linear audiences are shrinking, increasingly moving to big events, sports and news, which is where the broadcasters are increasingly needing to invest and compete, and those costs are going up. There's more and more competition across AVOD, video on demand, ad supported video on demand. There's more audiences going to non-ad supported platforms, whether they be SVOD or content commercial elimination. So yes, there's a real opportunity to, I'm not going to say compete with, as much as connect with other media and help brands, and especially the analysts now at the agencies who are looking more and more at measurement and shopper data to show how out of home influences those shopper decisions.
So that's how we claim the TV dollars. We better metrics, better connection to other forms of media, and also tie into data that is, from a broader context that can really help that brand. I think that's really good advice, and it's something the industry needs to think about, because again, that opportunity is here now, and we should grasp it.
And in that context, if I can, Anna, just go back to the old Wayne Gretzky adage, skate where the puck is going. The puck in media dollars are going to retail media, and that lends itself perfectly to out of home, because if the shopper dollars are moving, make sure that there's a recognition that you can connect up the boards to the locations, and brands are looking more and more at retail media. They are looking at audio more. So again, the connection there with radio. So I think it's more connecting the out of home as opposed to competing with other media.
That's a interesting point. And I get, you just called out of home, or you called audio or radio, or whatever we call it, an out of home medium, and it is, right, and so is retail. Retail maybe even more so out of home, in the sense that the out of home that we're talking about here is, right, a lot of people even count it as an extension of it. So to build, it is about connecting all the dots in the consumer journey, right? So but you need data for that, and you need a solid, good infrastructure. So very, very good point. And I think good advice to start thinking a little bit more about that as an industry, and not so just specifically about locations. So from that, using data and a better understanding consumers, what they're doing, what their movements and what they're buying. I want to flip over to talk about another thing that I think you mentioned in the beginning when we talked about the trends. So privacy issues and brand safety and eroding trust in advertising in general. I mean, that's very top of mind for all advertisers, I believe, today, and definitely also for media companies on the other side of advertising, given regulation and other things that are happening, and just caring about the consumer. Would you say that out of home is a brand safe medium? And if so, how can we, really use that to our advantage? And I guess then also all the changes that are happening in the privacy landscape, the cookie crumbling and the targeting capabilities going away. How can that help out of home? How do we use this to our advantage?
Brand safety continues to be right at the top of brand and agency priorities. It's fallen more into the agency lap, and it's an issue, I think, that is almost de facto a positive issue for out of home. There's control over the content, there's control over the environment. And it's a question that I think is not really being asked about out of home, where I do think there are opportunities. One of the things that's an interesting dynamic is the Black-owned media, multicultural media is moving into the brand safety category. Are brands investing sufficiently to achieve their diversity goals for their media plans? You see companies like Group M putting minimum 2% of their dollars. You see 2,000 people joining a multicultural, minority-owned and led event a couple of weeks ago, led by Byron Allen. One of the things that the industry does very well out front, Clear Channel, Intersection, and others are all doing a very good job of educating the ad community through content marketing and programs and initiatives. The out-of-home industry has a real presence at Media Village, which is the leading educational platform for agencies. And I think one of the things that can be done more of is showing how location-based advertising can be as effective as it is. And location is not only the area, the region, but it can be zip code specific. It can be retailer specific. I think that's an important part of tying into the brand safety issues by showing how locations can not only be avoided, but also chosen. And other than that, I'd almost stay away from the brand safety issue. The cookieless world is something that's evolving, is going to continue to be an issue. Again, I think it's more important to focus on the positives and the opportunities, seizing the moment, than it is on the negatives of others.
I agree, but it is a reality that we are a medium where targeting happens differently, right? Then we're not using data in the same way, and we can use location to our advantage. I like what you said about diversity, because I think out of home as a medium reaches more diverse audiences than any other medium, because we are in all those places, right, where diverse audiences are. So that's a good thing for us to think about. But I do believe, and it's not that I'm happy for anybody else getting pulled into the kind of the cookie crumble, but for since we have never really used cookies, it is a safe place for advertisers to go and advertise and feel that they're not, the whole one-to-many also, right? Like that they're not exposing themselves and their consumers to the same type of risk. We talked a little bit before also about, and it ties into privacy and brand safety, unfortunately, but you mentioned programmatic also in your kind of tee up. How important do you think that programmatic will be for out of home?
Extremely important. It's where the zero basing of media assets, media inventory is occurring. And it's where you're playing on a level playing field and within the same, on the same field, as opposed to being over in the out-of-home agency or targeted into an out-of-home budget. It's where the industry is evolving to. and more inventory is being purchased by on a transactional basis, whether it be programmatic, automated, DSP, SSP, the real-time bidding. This is an area that every part of the media ecosystem needs to be playing. The only content that can really remove itself is premium content. And I think, again, that I would flip the coin a bit there and say, well, you have no choice, in my opinion, to be aggressively in the programmatic space, where those dollars tend to become more commoditized, more transactional. And so it's also important to identify the premium inventory that you can pull out of the programmatic market. And then it becomes how much of, what is that inventory and how do you package it and sell it differently?
Yeah, I think that takes a whole rethink of how we're selling and how we're thinking about things, because again, out of home is so, depending on who you want to reach and because it's location, but it is in itself very premium-ish, right? But I agree. And I think, again, coming back to the seizing the day, it's a huge opportunity for us and something that we need to build out on. So when we had our prep call, and we've talked about this before, but I think we've seen more since our last conversation, there's been definitely more developments in what the world is going to look like. When we spoke last time, we didn't really know. We're still in the middle of the burning pandemic. And I think this is really, interesting. You're talking about the great workforce reassessment and transformation. I think it's something that we all grapple with, like what will the world look like? How can we, as the out-of-home industry, capitalize on, in particular for the agency side, right, where our buyers are, the post-pandemic personnel shifts? There's 60%, I believe, and I think you said this, of the agency workforce has been in the industry less than 6 years. There's a new workforce, they're working in different locations, and how do we use the new ways of working in the new workforce to our advantage?
Well, it's an important question, the new workforce, the new workplace, and we're spending a lot of time researching that. It raises issues of a number of issues, not the least of which is mental health and how do we best adapt to a growing percentage of our community that is very young, that's just joining the workplace, the workforce. And in many instances in our industry, they're underpaid and they leave quickly. In fact, historically, we've lost 60 to 80% of our early stage employees in the first 5 years, not just changing jobs, but changing careers and industries. The average first job, and this has changed a little in the last 2 years, in the last decade has gone from 18 months to 9 months. So people are coming in and leaving. So it's very difficult, especially when they're so heavily involved in the programmatic. It's a seize the moment opportunity, because again, I come back to that zero basing. They don't know the traditional legacy companies. They don't have relationships as they existed. And 10 or 15 years ago, when we were talking, you could depend on relationships that you knew your whole career and you got to know, you had relationships with them. 60% of the industry 20 years ago had been in the industry longer than 15 years, only 15% 1 to 2 years. Today, almost 40%'s been in the industry less than 2 years. You mentioned 60%, less than 6 years. And it's turning over. One of the other reasons why programmatic is important, but also why it's important to work more diligently to focus your sales efforts in two different paths. One is to deal with those younger team members, and most of that is through on-demand learning that they do. When they need to know something, they search for it. And the other is through effective communications out into the agencies. But then also in terms of relationships, how do you really find those people who are controlling the budgets and how do you reach them? And that's becoming more and more difficult.
And I like remember early days of mobile, where you try to get to the right people in the agency, and they didn't know. We had no examples. It was they were just going by their spreadsheet, and it was kind of about the best party and the best relationships. I mean, that's even harder now. So for a platform who's kind of breaking in and has a lot to offer, how do you best then reach and influence? Like, how do we find these new brand and agency professionals that are open for big business, the new opportunity? Because I hope they all are, but they don't really know our industry that well.
Well, it's really important that we return to some kind of in-person relationships. I do think that's where the trade associations come in, and how important it is because you're more likely to get access to a decision maker at a brand who may invest just a couple of hours a month in media. So how do you get on that schedule? Making sure you know the in-house agencies and the leaders there, and that they understand the role and position of out of home in the context in which they're doing business, which is increasingly digital. So to understand that, if they're looking at audio, here's how out of home fits in. They're looking at digital, here's the digital inventory. If they're looking at, how the impact of retail media is changing their promotional spend, how television is being impacted by the loss, especially cable, of linear viewing. Again, it's telling those stories in the context in which they're doing business, and recognizing that as an industry, you have very little time available to you. So how do you make the best use of it?
That is very, very true. And yeah, you got to be efficient and fast and go to the right person. It's not easy, but it's yeah, that's again very good advice. It is complex. I mean, there's so many choices these buyers have to do today. So like putting things in context of the different areas they're focusing on is good. We're certainly trying to do that as much as we can, and having you here is part of that. All right, I want to switch over to again the buyer seller dynamic, and coming back to in person is of course super important, and I think we all want to, but we're still in a new we are in a new era. So tell us a little bit about your view of the new dynamic between buyers and sellers.
Well, again, it's becoming much more transactional. Every one of the major agencies has invested, in some case, billions in research groups, which are increasingly informing the planning process. And so number one, it's really being in the game on measurement as an industry and being accredited, the tying in as much as possible with first party data from your partners. And again, I think that's where the out of home industry has a very unique opportunity to tie in with the major retailers in partnering to go to the brands for their shopper dollars that they're shifting into their retail media networks, and encouraging them. Some of these networks are incorporating either their inventory into supply side platforms owned by others, or more likely they're taking the inventory of others into their media network, Walmart Connect, for example. And that's an opportunity, I think, to recognize that your buyer may in fact be also a reseller on your behalf in that marketplace. So it's understanding who you're speaking to and the context in which you're speaking to them, and how you're looking at your own inventory. The dynamic around diversity is absolutely key. Salesforce's, our industry ranks 13th out of 15th industries in diversity. And we've been there for years, and we're not getting better. In fact, we're getting worse, because we're losing people who do join the industry at a higher rate. So developing onboarding programs that are on demand and digital, developing educational platforms, not just for your own teams, but for the teams of your clients and partners. it's recognizing that we as an industry have to reach out to HBCUs, to community colleges, to engineering schools, to tech schools, for a new generation of team members, as opposed to what's been our norm for the last 50 years of, your daughter's looking for a job, your niece, your neighbor's friend, we hire ourselves. And we need to also look at veterans and other industries where we can bring people in at a more senior level. So when young people join, they look up and see someone who looks like them. We have a lot of work to do, and we're not doing a good job of it. And that's not my saying that, it's the DEI leaders across the industry who are saying that, and who are frustrated themselves by our industry's lack of growth and success. As an industry, again, we rank among the bottom ranking of all industries in terms of the investment we make in training, in educating our communities on B2B marketing. We invest an average of 3% of revenues on B2B marketing versus 8% as the industry average. So we have a lot of work to do across a lot of the platforms that are required to grow our diversity. And the agencies are becoming more and more diverse. The brands are becoming more and more diverse. So if we want to relate, if selling organizations want to relate to their clients, they have to become more diverse in their organizations.
I mean, 100%. I mean, we need to, first of all, we need to know who we're meeting on the other side of the table. But I think advertising in general is about, it's for everyone in society. That's how you're going to be economically viable. So our industry needs to look like society. It's really a given. It's hard to do, though. I commend you for the work that you're doing with the diversity.org, but just finding talent, attracting talent today can be really hard. So it takes
it's easier to attract than to keep. I'm sorry.
Well, that's the other piece too, right? Yeah, if you bring them in, but both of those things are key. And I agree with you. If we're going to be successful, we have to get there, and we have to look more like both the buyer, but also as the end user in general of whatever product it is that we're pushing. And then, yeah, I think your point on measurement, well taken. I mean, we're excited in the out of home industry now. We've done a ton of work, and we are definitely, this I guess is the next part of our measurement journey. We're realizing it, and we're up for an MRC accreditation, which I think will be immensely important for us to create trust and be able to promote out of home in a more in a broader, more cross-platform world. So but both of those things that you mentioned now, I think are underpinning our success and takes a lot of hard work. But again, it seize the day. This is the time to do it, right? So I guess that would be if there is a game changer for the industry, if there's one new thing that we can do, that you think that diversity, well, and then I guess measurement would be the way where we should invest first to challenge the status quo.
It's a great question. What is the one thing that you would do? And it varies by company. Obviously, it varies by the nature of the inventory that's being sold. I think the biggest thing the industry can do is look at itself as part of the media family that is not separate from, but a part of, as I've been talking about. I certainly think understanding at least where the technology is going and how, in terms of the metaverse, and not assuming that, as a lot of cynics do, that the metaverse, sure, it'll have its own collapse, whether it be around crypto, but understanding that programmatic is moving to the blockchain, and that'll be done within 10 years, that NFTs and IP are becoming real transactional IP intellectual capital, and that crypto is a currency that you may have some companies asking to pay you with.
And that I want to save that for last. I'm saving that question for as a closer, but we can certainly talk about it now. But we are already seeing, and I was actually just on a call today with somebody who was talking about how they were paid in crypto. So so no, it definitely is the future. But I want to still linger a little bit on what the sees the day right now in this moment that we can do as an industry to really kind of move things forward as we're entering a new age. And I think what you said was think about out of home more holistically as part of something bigger, not just the overall advertising industry.
Yeah, and I'd also, we always say think global, act local. I say think local, act local. Ultimately, it all comes down, to understanding the local needs, the local realities, and that brands are increasingly thinking of themselves, by region, by community, by retailer. And so understanding that out of home as an industry can relate to that, I think, much more logically than a lot of other media can. I would say if there was one thing that I would urge the out-of-home industry to do, it's really already doing very effectively, which is using innovative ways to communicate with the changing community of buyers that you're working with.
All right, so I want to talk about the positioning of the industry a little bit, and then we're going to get to the metaverse. I promise you, Jack. So let's say you were back at your first job selling bus sides at Metro Media, but it's today. What's the number one thing you would be pushing for out of home?
Measurement. When I was selling bus advertising, we actually used to go out on Columbus Circle, which most of the Manhattan bus routes would come through, or Kings Highway, and we'd stand there literally with the client or agency counting the bus signs that went by and making sure if it was 25%, and then at 11, 12 o'clock at night, going up to the bus garages and going into the buses to count the bus posters. That's not something that I think the industry should be doing anymore.
I hope we're not, but we might.
Maybe we are.
We've certainly advanced, but we have ways to go. I don't think we as an industry ourselves can count, but I think it's again tying it to other, so marketers can compare.
Yeah. When I was at selling bus advertising, selling the inside of the bus was the most fun, and I was really successful at it because I was selling ideas to the clients on how to use the inside of the bus effectively. The New Yorker at the time was doing a campaign called Yes, the New Yorker. It was showing up in surprising places. And I talked to a guy named Pete Spellman, who was the head of marketing for the New Yorker, saying, no place will be more surprising for you than inside the buses going around Manhattan. And they'd take the cartoons and they'd put them in the square frames that we had, the 6 square frames. And then the long signs were saying, yes, the New Yorker. And literally people were walking around the buses, reading the cartoons. It was one of New Yorker's most successful campaigns, and it won a number of awards. Why? Because it was a great idea. So I think one of the things that the industry can really do is work on great ideas for using the medium. And I think it's doing a decent job of that, frankly.
And I believe we are, but I think there's not that we are not doing it or trying to do, but there's a lot more we can do now. You're raising something really interesting because now, and with new technology, 5G, better screens, but even some of the static stuff. What you're talking about, we talked about in the beginning, the sort of the comparison between out of home and Twitter, a few bold, words that can create something big. But our medium also, then you were talking about the cartoon. I think out of home has been seen very much as this short, punchy message that will hit right at the heart in the right location. But we are more and more becoming a potential, content medium, not just for the short message, but for something bigger and entertaining. And again, when people are actually for once looking up from their phone on the bus or wherever they are. So How do you think we can articulate that? And how do we as an industry that's very focused on honestly selling location, how can we position ourselves more as a content medium? There's so much more there, right?
I'll go back to the Twitter analogy, and Twitter positions itself as a content medium. It's just, whatever number of characters are now allowed. LinkedIn positions itself as a content medium by pushing that as a premium opportunity. I don't think you have to necessarily change the technology. It's all there. The digital opportunity is all there. It's how to use it to communicate in new, different, and effective ways. I was seeing the Nike exceptional out-of-home ad that with the shoebox coming out from the billboard.
Yeah.
I think when you walk around Times Square, you see some amazing applications. You see the M&M store and how they use their M&M characters up on their massive billboard. I know Outfront publishes regular examples of some of the most creative applications. I think some of the best creativity in advertising today is being done in out-of-home. And I think it's a matter of just letting agencies know that they can win some awards with their out-of-home.
Well, that we're definitely working on. But I think that our members much more, and I know that Intersection Outfront also does it, but an in-house content studio that is thinking about out of home a little bit differently than just, or I'm not going to say just because it's truly powerful, but an ad, but as a medium where you can grab someone's attention for maybe 15 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, like co-production of content that looks more like traditional media and not so much as an ad, right, with an advertiser. I think that that's a huge opportunity for our industry moving forward.
And the technology is in your favor, working in your favor. Again, I'll go back. Well, I'll wait for the metaverse to continue that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you got to save that one. Otherwise, my thing doesn't work. All right. So final question, and then we'll get to the metaverse. But we've talked a lot about it, like across this whole conversation. Out of home as part of something bigger from the advertiser's perspective, right? Like a true part of a media mix and strategy, not a standalone, right? So where do you see out of home in the broader media mix? Where do you think it ranks, and why? And then also, finally, what's your favorite out of home format? I guess I want to ask you too.
I think I've really been encouraging, and the idea that out of home fits across the landscape, not as a piece of necessarily, but an always there, always on medium. It's one of the few media that is not moving to on demand. So you're able to immerse yourself in every landscape, wherever that landscape may be, and be a part of it. And I think in the same context, out of home needs to be a part of every media plan. It fits within the targeting model. It fits within the think local, act local. It fits within every measurement criteria that a brand or an agency might need. I think the challenge of out of home is that it's locked into legacy agency organizational models that the agencies themselves are breaking down. And the industry needs to operate in multiple communities and serve different masters. And I think the most important seize the day opportunity is this is the moment. This is the time to recognize that the industry is zero basing. They're looking at things completely new. New people are doing the analyses. You're not locked into traditional models. So rather than waiting for the industry to change for you or even with you, adapt and change ahead of them where it's headed. That's not 5 years from now. It's not 2 years from now. It's happening now. And 2 years from now, it'll be too late.
Yeah.
This is the moment to set your own agenda for the next 2, 3, 4 decades and break out of those paradigms from the last 2, 3, 4 decades that are no longer working for the industry.
Mm. Yeah, that's seize the day, for sure. And I agree with that. So finally, with that, talking about the future and where we're going, where the puck is going, I really want to talk about, the new age of Web3 and the metaverse, and seize your thoughts, not just the day, but on what is ahead and how we best can educate ourselves of that. So we talked about it a little bit already. There's a lot there, right? And I think a lot of people, me included, make the mistake sometimes of trying to put it all into one mix, but it really is different things, right? Maybe the same, maybe different sides of not the same coin, but the same cube, right? So of the following things that you've mentioned, all of them right now, we as an industry, what should we be focused most on now? And I'm really talking about the out-of-home industry. Is it the metaverse? Is it Web3? Is it crypto? Is it NFTs? Is it blockchain? Is it everything? But if so, how do we cobble it all together, right? It's a whole new world that's not necessarily IRL for us.
Well, I do think it's the old 80-15-5 rule. 80% has to go into today's business, the immediacy, and recognizing the shifting structure, organization, and personnel of the agencies where you generate the vast majority of your transactions. So I would say that's number one, adapting to programmatic, and that requires that you have the measurement tools that can compete and fit into the programmatic model, I would say. So I'm not saying programmatic is 80%, but I'm saying the sales organization itself and how you're organizing it and how you're investing in working with your advertisers and mostly your agencies. So I would say that's 80%. 15%, I would say, is idea based. Where are the creative opportunities to really showcase and build premium inventory? And within that context, to work as an industry in both contexts, that 95% needs to be as an industry coming together, but also recognizing that it's more about the opportunity to collaborate with other media as opposed to competing with other media. And then the 5%, I would say, is understanding where the industry is going with the metaverse and the opportunities, mostly within the gaming industry, which is where the priority of the metaverse is today, and also recognizing that that we as an industry need to have the expertise in that area. You need to have professionals within the organization who are really looking at how to build out to meet the needs of the metaverse, which includes blockchain, it includes crypto, it includes NFTs. Mostly right now, it includes gaming. And there's inventory within gaming. And so those are the priorities. And then I add retail media as a priority, the diverse community, building diverse organizations. And then basically just coming up, making sure that you communicate effectively that out of home is the number one most secure, most brand safe reach medium.
Well said. But I will say, I mean, that we are definitely, especially these days, right, soon to be maybe the only medium that exists in the real world. So that, if you think people are going to be in the metaverse, or this is where at least my thinking goes, a lot of their time, they're still going to have to be in the real world a bit, and then we're there to meet them. So, but the question is out of home's role in the metaverse. Will we exist in the metaverse? Is there a place for us there? Should we be buying real estate there? Or is the metaverse advertising opportunity about how to send people to the right place in the metaverse and then send them back again? How will this affect our buying path right? Like that's things that how do you view out of home's role in the metaverse? You see us as inside of it?
I think when you're in the metaverse, you're in real estate. If you're in an NFT based game called My Neighbor Alice, you're out in neighborhoods, you're walking around, you're in neighborhoods, you're building neighborhoods, and in gaming, you look at the a number of the games, and whether they're the driving games or the Fortnite or others, you're surrounded by a world, and you're in that world, whether it's your avatar or whatever model you're doing, you're there, you're looking around. When I put on the Oculus Quest, I'm in different worlds. Those worlds have the potential for advertising inventory. Certainly the TV networks are looking at it. Fox has launched blockchain creative labs and partnering with Dolly Parton to be in her world, and Warner Music Group is building out a metaverse where their artists can build their own communities and land. Snoop Dogg is, built a metaverse and is selling property near his for hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is all inventory that the out-of-home industry can be a part of. And if it's not the legacy companies that invest in and build them, then there'll be competitors to them who build and invest in that real estate. It's a real estate land grab right now, and I think that's the best way to look at it.
We're good at that. So,
exactly.
So speaking of real estate, innovation, creativity, and being a thought leader and ahead of the puck, that's definitely you, Jack. And when you created Media Village, I mean, even the name lends itself really well to the metaverse, right? So how about yourself? Will you set up a Media Village? Will it be a place for us to go to in the metaverse?
I think, the role of Media Village is to amplify the messages of others and to hopefully be in the lead. We will be announcing soon Media Village 3.0 related to Web3 and enabling our members to have a presence I won't say it's communicating in the metaverse in that context, but it's building their own communications platforms to be able to communicate in a world that will be doing business in the metaverse. I think companies that have intellectual property will be building NFTs around those properties. The transactions will, in a transactional programmatic world, people still need to know what it is they're buying and learn about it. So we are building the Media Village 3.0 as the educational and knowledge home for the industry, as well as a transactional home for commerce around NFTs.
Well, I certainly look forward to be a part of that.
I do too. Anna, I just want to say, I say things as if I know them or understand them. This is a world I don't understand either, but we all have to understand that, the printing press had 300 years before television. Television, had 100 years before the internet. Internet has had 30 years. The metaverse is going to have less than 10 years before it's at the same stage of where the internet is today. So we can't afford to wait whether we understand it or not. We have to go there, and then we have to be in the game. We have to be on that field.
Yeah, I agree. Even this whole industry, who's been around for all of it and probably will be thereafter as well.
Exactly.
Jack, I can't thank you enough for, I was going to ask you for your takeaways, but I think you've given them to us in many different ways over this webinar. It's been great. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. Big treat. And you've shared a lot of great insights with the audience here. For our viewers who joined us today, thank you so much. This session will be available in our OAAA webinar library almost immediately after. And so if you want to see it again, grab some tidbits of wisdom or share it with someone, you can absolutely do so. You can also always reach Jack if you want to via mediavillage.com. And or if you're interested in all his insights around DEI, which he shared with us today and are great and want to help improve our industry, you can reach him on advancingdiversity.org. So please check out those two great organizations and the one great, fabulous Jack Myers. Thank you again, Jack. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of
Always
your
fun, Anna. Thank you
day.
so much.
Thank you.